Welcome to the Indispensables. Today I have Yuchun Lee. He's the CEO of Allego, which is a software company dedicated to sales enablement. This fellow, he spent part of his career founding and developing a company called Unica, which he sold to IBM in 2010. And now he's been running Allego for Mr. Lee. How long?
10 years. We
10
just
years. And
about 10 years anniversary.
Yuchun Lee, welcome to the Indispensables.
Thank you, Bruce.
You are. It sounds like one part entrepreneur, one part operator, and innovator, and so you're running. And Allego is a 300-person organization, and you founded it. You started from scratch.
That's right.
You got to be careful. This is going to be habit forming.
Yeah, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Love creating new markets, developing compelling product sets and solution to the market. This is what I do. This is my passion.
Fantastic. Well, that's a good kickoff. So tell us your story in a nutshell. How does somebody get to be Yuchun Lee?
Sure. So I've always loved software. I was a nerd in high school and started my first company in junior at my high school. This is well before there was an industry, and went on study computer science and electrical engineering, and spent the first few years working for a company called Digital Equipment Corporation up in Massachusetts. And then I founded my first company, Unica, when I was 26 years old.
Wow. And just to be clear, you studied engineering at MIT?
Correct. Yep.
That's for the uninitiated. That's where the brainiacs go. So, and you started your first company when you were 26.
Yeah, the company in high school I started when I was 18, and then 26 is when I started Unica.
So the company in high school, I mean, do we know about that company? Have we heard of that company? Were you able to sell that company?
It's very early days. It was a company called Apollo Software. We developed a application for professional draftsmen to use personal computer to create their professional drawings. This is well before the Mac Draw, Mac Paint, and those programs. So basically, it's one of the first application in our whole area.
Wow. And then you happen to go to MIT. So you were in the Boston area, which is a hub of technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship, right? So you were in the right place. And what was it like? Tell us about your first job. I mean, a guy who's a serial entrepreneur who goes on to be a founder and take companies to market, and then the likes of which you could sell to IBM. You must have been a lot to handle in your first job.
Well, I was quite naive when I first started. And like anybody in this position, I made plenty of mistakes. And one of the things one of my mantra is actually, you walk around every day, you want to learn from your mistakes. So if you're not making a mistake every day, you're really not growing and learning and improving. So through one way or another, over time, I start to make less and less mistake. I still make mistake, but in different areas. I try not to repeat the same, and really just started to get a hang of it. There's a proverbial 10,000 hours in anything we do. I think I'm putting my 10,000 hour in the software business over the last 30 years being a CEO.
Oh, I guess so. And so what was it about your first job? What did you do in your first job that led you to leave and start a business?
Yeah, so ever since high school, I always want to be an entrepreneur, start my own company. So my first real job was with digital equipment, right after college, after I got a master's degree from MIT and an undergraduate. And even at digital, I was looking out and trying to learn what would a company of this size feel like, look like, how does it run? So even when I was there, I was really thinking about starting a business. And the area that was in, Bruce, was in the area of machine learning, AI, basically everything you hear about it today is basically my major back then. And the group we were in was called Machine Learning and AI Consulting Organization, where we help pretty large organizations to leverage machine learning, neural nets, and these technology to improve their businesses.
And
So
that
that
was
was
early days, right? So when did you graduate from MIT?
1989
So you and I are the same age. And then you got a master's degree at MIT in what?
in electrical engineering and computer science.
So you went in, were you an engineer at Digital Equipment?
I was.
But I mean, it's such a different role being an engineer than it is being a founder. So tell us about that transition.
Well, so it's what I've experienced in the software industry is that if you have deep technical expertise, it does help you make key decisions about the business, about the technology that you're betting the business on, etc. So, and businesses is always one of those things that is a necessary element of starting businesses. I mean, I have an MBA from Babson as well, and part of this is just to make sure you got both of those correct. It's not just technical, it's not just business, but the founding team as a whole need to make sure all the areas are covered, all the bases are covered.
And so when did you get your MBA from Babson?
It was during actually. It was during
During.
when I was running Unica. I took on a challenge for myself to get to know all aspects of the business as well. So it took me a while. It took me 5 years to get my master's MBA at Babson, but it was doing their evening program.
So you must have had a lot of free time.
Right. And the best thing that came out of Babson, Bruce, was I met my wife there.
Ah, that is the best thing. Excellent. And is she involved in your enterprises, or she's like a doctor or something?
No, no, no. Are you kidding me? That would be a problem.
Okay, all right. So what was the first thing you did when you were going to make the transition from Digital Equipment to founding Unica? Because I think a lot of people are curious, right? Especially right now. There's a lot of innovation going on. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty in the economy. There's a lot of entrepreneurial desire, but there's and I think times of uncertainty. Are also times of entrepreneurship typically. But what were your first moves? Did you recruit a team first, or did you come up with a product first, or did you find financing first, or did you identify a customer first? Those are usually the hooks, right, that lead someone to start a business.
Well, there are a lot of different ways, in my opinion, to start a business. But the way I went about it was to first figure out who are the people that will complement my skills to tackle a myriad of opportunity. It could be any sorts of business venture that we get in. So I founded Unica with two other co-founders, Ruby Kennedy and David Chung. These are some of the best, brightest people I've met at MIT. And so three of us started Unica. The first thing we try to figure out is who's our customer. And I don't know if you remember, Bruce, but 1992, when we founded Unica, it was a year of a recession.
Yep.
So the company was founded in a recession. The first thing we do is try to figure out who are our customers so that we can bootstrap the business, leveraging sort of the relationship we have with the customers while building our product over time. That was our initial strategy. And luckily, some of our early customers are pretty big organizations like Alcoa and JP Morgan that help us really establish ourselves in leveraging machine learning as a technology. So we use that as a catalyst to help us build our product. And 2 years later, we roll out a software product and start to grow the business ever since.
So you founded the business with a couple of pals from MIT. So step one, go to MIT.
Step one, find somebody who complements your skills.
Well, it helps a lot if you go to MIT. But step one, find a team of people who complement your skills. And it's 2 years later you roll out a product. So what were you doing to bring in money and pay the bills for the first 2 years? You said you were bootstrapping. How were you? What did the bootstrap look like?
So we do contract work, consulting work around some of these customers we've engaged in, right? And while doing so, we also basically build our product over time. We also got some government funding through a program, little known program called SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research Grants. So we've got a few of those grants to help us, but basically bootstrap ourselves all the way through. and then we got profitable by 1998.
Wow. Now,
And
were you in an incubator?
No, we completely independent. We didn't have any funding.
Wow.
Got to profitability. We did bring in some financing, but one of the things I'm most proud of was that we were able to grow Unica without using anybody's money, including the investors' money. Their money ended up just sitting in the bank. When we went public in 2005, we actually have a lot of cash on the balance sheet. So that was a very proud journey that we went through.
Wow. Okay. So you founded it in 92 and you go public 13 years later.
Correct.
So net present value in 92, we don't know, but it was significant.
It was a good return on effort, I would say.
And what what was the product?
So we again started out in the machine learning area, and at
Yeah,
one point in
for
time,
the uninitiated, can you
yeah,
explain? So nowadays they're talking about artificial intelligence, and but these were early days of machine learning.
that's right, early days, but it's basically the same technology using data that you can train a machine to recognize handwriting, to recognize uh, uh, derivative and equity movement in a market. This is the use case at JP Morgan. Recognize how a aluminum smelting uh, plant function and how do we optimize the electricity usage, et cetera.
That's Alcoa, right?
That's Alcoa, exactly. So
Yeah.
it's the same technology. Now, in around 1995 was when we realized, being such a small company, we need to focus our energy in one domain, one sort of use case, if you will. In 95 is when we're focusing on marketing. So over since 1995 to 2005, 2010, Unica was focused on marketing automation. So basically provide technology to help the chief marketing officers to solve their job every day, which includes, how do I find out which customer will respond to us? Well, guess what? Machine learning can help you predict the response rate of different type of people and help you target them better, right? And we also build out other product like campaign management and whatnot for, again, the marketing organization, and then eventually build out this whole new space called enterprise marketing management. And that's how we sort of became the leader in that whole space.
Wow. And then and then you sold your business in 2010 to IBM.
That's right. So IBM became a customer of ours actually in 2008, and they love our technology so much that they bought us in 2010.
That's fantastic. Okay, so step 706 is have IBM buy you.
That's a good step always.
Yeah. Fantastic. And then, so how long were you on the bench before you founded a new company, or was part of the acquisition deal? Did you have to stick around for a while?
No, well, since we're public, it's an all cash acquisition. But I decided to actually stay at IBM because I've never been in a company that was over 100 billion in revenue at the time, and we were given an edict to go and acquire other businesses to assemble all the technologies that a CMO would need. And so I spent 3 years uh, really helping IBM consolidate the technology needed for large organizations, and had a blast. I mean, it's a wonderful organization, and we're able to do so much so fast that as an independent small public traded company I would never be able to do given the resources that we had. So that was a really great run. And then 3 years later is when I started Allego.
Okay, and tell us about that. And just if for people who are following along, I mean, just imagine the story arc here, right? Because what you're telling about is a 20+ year process where you start from scratch, right? You start to you as you say, bootstrap. You release a product. You start to get to profitability. Then you go public. Then you sell to IBM. Then you hang around at IBM for a while. Did you take a break, Yuchun?
So Bruce, I mean, some people had it. Maybe it's like winning a lottery. You may be able to do the story arc within 3, 5 years, but I never had that fortune. For me, it's always about work, hard work, and focus on what I'm good at, what I like to do. And I must honestly say, throughout that period, I don't feel like I'm like working my ass off. I feel like I am just learning every day, and I wake up every day energized about the business we're building together with a great team. We had a wonderful team at Unica, and we have even a stronger team today at Allego. So those are the things that excites me.
Yeah. So were you? I mean, were you on the bench for a little while, or as soon as you left, you were done at IBM? You were like, okay, what's next?
Yeah, in fact, after IBM, so I ended my tenure at IBM at the end of 2012. I started Allego. At the same time, I invested in another company called Clarabridge, where I'm the executive chairman of the business. And then I also took over that company as CEO for a few years during CEO transition. So I actually ran both companies for about 2 year period. Uh,
Wow.
yeah.
And what? So, yeah, how did you balance that? That's now I got to tell you, your story is extraordinary. But I've talked with plenty of people who have this story arc. But now you got me. This might be a first. So you were a CEO of you're founding a company and running a company, another company at the same time.
Yeah, it was challenging. I must say that was the one period where I do feel like I was working, Bruce, because I remember having to fly. So the other company, Clarabridge, was in Washington D.C., right, and Allego was in Boston. So Monday and Tuesday I would run Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday I would run Allego. Wednesday night I would fly to D.C. and I'll run Clarabridge Thursday, Friday. Now this is well before the pandemic taught us that you can actually run a business remotely. At that
Turns
point,
out, right?
yeah, we had to interview. Now, luckily, I was able to find a great CEO, Mark Bischoff, 2 years after, and hand the reign over to him while stepping back to executive chair. And Clarabridge was sold to Qualtrics last year, actually, for at the time of exit, $1.4 billion. So that was a
Wow.
as well.
And what was Claire Bridge?
Clarabridge was in the business of providing B2C organization an ability to listen to their customer and understand their sentiment. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced all these surveys that's out there after you've taken a flight, rent a car, and stay in a hotel. Clarabridge is behind a lot of those data to help organization understand what's wrong with their operation and be able to fix it right away.
Got it. So they're gathering data that can then be mapped and maybe used to predict the future or make decisions.
And improve the service level, the customer experience of their clients, basically.
So at core, I mean, I'm starting to see a theme here. Would all of this count as business intelligence, basically?
So the whole space, think of it as sort of the customer facing aspect of enterprises, right? So you think of sales, marketing, and service. If you think about the business that I've deeply gotten involved with, it's all around sales, marketing, or service. And to me, these are the three key elements to provide a great customer experience. And as you know, the purpose of a business is to have a customer. So we are all about making sure the customer have a great experience, build great relationship with businesses, and help them to be successful. And I think we're in a pretty pivotal point in history where the customers are engaging with companies in very, very different ways than even 5, 10 years ago. And there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that, and I want to explore that a little bit more. In the meanwhile, can you explain? Okay, so here you go again, right? I'm guessing somehow maybe you were involved with private equity folks, or somehow you got your hands on Claire Bridge, right? But Allego is your next child, right? Your next baby. And tell us, was that startup experience very different because you were much more experienced, you were much better resourced?
Very much so, Bruce. So I, the way I would describe it is that I designed the startup of Allego almost to the ideal that I can envision in my head, which is number one, we pick a market that is in great need of transformation. And I'm able to handpick that because of my experience. I've seen how companies adopt technology and know the sequencing of it. Number one. Number two, we pick a team consists of some of the best and the brightest I've ever met in my career, from technology to business partners, and the best sellers I know. All of them assembled together to start a business, and I also know the pitfalls of making sure the company started with the right set of culture, and make sure that those culture are well known ahead of time to everybody. We have this thing, for example, at Lego, we call it the operating principle, and we outline how we expect every professional to behave in the company. And that type of sort of clarity allows us to build an organization with very strong culture, highly collaborative, and able to do great things. And people are motivated to be successful in the business. So those are just things I've learned. Also financially, I'm less dependent on startup funding. I'm able to write a check myself. I'm able to spend all of my energy on the business instead of managing investors, managing a board, and certainly not managing a publicly traded company investor base. So all that helps.
Yeah, gee whiz. So there's a lot here to unpack. Can you explain what was the market you identified that was in need of transformation?
Yeah, so the customer that buy our solution are organizations that have big and expensive sales forces. So you think about salespeople, right? They need training. They need to know what they're talking about. They need to be able to answer objections. They need to know what messaging, what content to share with the customer, and more importantly, these days they need to be able to virtually sell to customer because a lot of customers don't want to meet with sellers. I don't know how many times you respond to your email when somebody's soliciting anything. You're probably shutting them out, right? So there's a major change in the works in the market, and we're trying to help organizations to be able to, better message, better tell their story, identify the best storyteller within the organization, able to sort of bring those message up front and make sure everybody know how to, hit their quota, how to onboard people, train them quickly, launch product correctly, etc. That whole piece is a space called sales enablement, and it consists of a lot of these different technologies that's useful for sellers.
Okay, so I understand that's powerful. So let me ask you this. Um, so now I'm really interested in hearing more about your culture. So is it top secret, or are you able to talk about the culture? Are you able to talk about the operating principle?
It's not top secret. I would characterize that as just a set of lessons I've learned, if you will. And so, for example, our most foundational lesson is that we care a lot about the truth in our business, meaning that we could be the group with the smartest minds and the most brilliant minds. If we're not viewing reality correctly, we may be solving the wrong problem, right? So, and we know a lot of organizations out there fail because they have the wrong assumption about the world. So we as a team are committed to basically be truthful to each other, be able to share honest opinion about how we're doing as a business, even if truth hurts, right? You gotta have that.
Now, is this like Ray Dalio's radical candor? Is that what you're headed? What you're
Very
talking about?
similar. Exactly. It's very similar. That's one. And then so with that as the foundation, we have a set of principles how to operate efficiently in terms of problem solving, and also how to embrace mistakes if we do make mistakes, which we will, right? So
Okay,
those are
that's
examples.
powerful. Let's walk through that. So I love the idea of embracing the truth. So you believe in facts and logic?
I think we all should.
Well, but there's these are facts and logic are becoming controversial. There are many people who seek to argue that 2 + 2 = 5.
Well, everybody can have their own opinion, but what you love to be true may or may not be true, and it's important for a business collectively that we operate on truth, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, I am puzzled that I have to say this, but it's refreshing to hear that you feel that a starting point would be that we have shared facts and agree on basic rules of logic, because man, I think without that you're in a pickle.
right.
And I think that's a real good starting point. And but I'd love to hear about, you said something about how to about problem solving. I'd love to hear what's your sort of philosophy about problem solving.
Well, Bruce, in my experience, many professionals go to work and spend a lot of energy trying to look good, especially in front of their bosses or CEOs and whatnot. And so, one of our problem solving principles is don't worry about how you look because guess what? We can see right through it. So, come to a room, say something when you need to say something, don't say something just to look good. That's one example. So, we have a set of these things. And the other thing that we found problematic is a lot of times decision get made in a meeting and then people leave the meeting and they all remember different outcome of the decision. So how do we document these decisions so that everybody's aligned afterwards? So there are a small list of things that's about how do we efficiently operate as a team and how do we detect misalignment? How do we communicate that properly? There's a whole bundle of sort of expected behavior that we make it very clear to every one of the new hires into Allego that this is what we expect.
Yeah, and so I like that sort of thing. Like I call that, so you got clear priorities and you need really clear ground rules.
Exactly.
So that people and sometimes people feel imprisoned by guidelines and parameters. I think most people feel empowered by guidelines and parameters.
Right.
It's like an operating manual,
Yeah.
instructions. Hey, this is how we operate. Our ground rules are, I assume you're not telling people, don't worry how you look, so it's okay to show up in your pajamas. Maybe you do.
Yeah. Yeah. We use the word judgment a lot. You got to use good judgment, right? And we do think that having these explicit is great because otherwise somebody who joined a company anew, they have to figure it out. They have to sort of read between the lines, just too much work, right? So that's why we put this all up front. I meet with every single new hire to make sure they understand these operating principles so that everybody's aligned. Uh,
And so don't say something just to preen, right? Don't say something just to compete. Don't say something just to have something to say. Say
exactly.
something for a good business reason.
Right. And
Yeah.
and build that skill sets to listen, for example. As you know, listening is one of the hardest skill to do well. And every single CEO I know that I respect are those that are great listeners.
Yeah,
And
and to your point, you say so. Okay, if we're going to have a meeting and we're going to have people conducting themselves in a certain way, so that we're listening to each other, we're saying things for good business reasons, we're trying to advance a question, right, or advance a problem toward a solution, or whatever it is, right, move toward a plan. And then we're going to document I call this practicing extreme alignment,
yep,
right? So that we're going to make sure when you say everyone's on the same page, like there's actually a page. We're all
exactly.
going to have that page. That's so right.
Yeah.
So
I
we
mean,
know where we ended up.
exactly, Bruce. It sounds so basic, but you'll be shocked how many companies don't do this.
No, I think it's critical. And I mean, often I've been consulting with organizations of all shapes and sizes and doing management training for decades. And what I always tell people is, hey, if you master the fundamentals, you're all set. And I'm going to bet my bottom dollar, there's plenty of room still to fine tune the fundamentals. I
Yeah.
mean, the fundamentals are where most people don't concentrate enough,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
okay, now you also said something about we're going to make mistakes, but you said earlier, you want to learn from your mistakes. You don't want to make the same mistakes twice. I sometimes call it the Warren Bennis rule, which is, great leaders make the same amount of mistakes as not great leaders. It's just they recognize them more quickly and act to to change course more
That's
quickly.
right. That's right. Yeah. And Bruce, I think the key ingredient in there as a company is to make sure that you truly tolerate mistakes and you remove the need to be defensive about it. Because to me, defending yourselves after a mistake is a wasted energy. It's one where it's not just emotionally and time and sometimes because one try to cover one's mistake is when you start to you know make a problem even worse, right? So we grew up as professionals and as individuals all through our lives when the schools, the parents, everybody's telling us mistake is bad, right? So we associate mistake equals something negative. I'm here to tell you as a professional, I think the sooner one can embrace their own mistake professionally, the better they will be, the further they will go. I've seen many cases where the people who embrace their own mistake the most end up to be the fastest learner, and they're the one that go the furthest, fastest in their career.
Yeah, because the worst thing you can do is keep trying to convince yourself that a mistake was actually the right thing to do in the first place, right?
Yeah.
If you didn't dot your I, you don't go to bat for the fact that no one should dot their I's,
Yeah,
right?
or you cover it up, right? That's even worse, right?
Oh, well, yeah. Then you have both problem that might fester and grow, and you also have an integrity issue.
Exactly. So embrace your mistake is one of our key mantra. Is one of the things that we value quite a bit at Allego.
And so you told me you have 300 people, and but what is the story arc of this business? I mean, is this now a business you're growing for an exit like the first one, or is this one? No, this is my final spouse.
Well, I've never, I can honestly, I've never started a company thinking about exits at all. And I think as time goes on, the need to exit become less and less important. With that said, I am, extremely aware of the needs of anybody who put in time and energy into a company like Allego. They need to cash out at some point. And the good news is that we have a lot of people that are buyers of Allego stock. So I'm not thinking about liquidity event is needed for myself personally, obviously, but I'm able to deliver on what people need to do through time. So this is really about making sure that we build the market, we build a great company. I love the arc of building a company from nothing to something great, and give all the employees a great experience in that journey. Give our customer highly satisfied, terrific product that they love. Yeah, those are the things that drives me, and
Yeah,
that's
and it's so interesting because you said earlier you were able to design this one, right? So you were able to. I mean, when you're starting a business by bootstraps, there's a lot of idiosyncrasies and band-aids, right?
for
Um,
sure.
but it sounds like so it must be very gratifying to be able to design it exactly how you want.
Yeah, and for example, we don't have a board at Allego, right? It's me and my co-founder, and our executive team basically run this business. And there's
Wow.
a lot of value to that because we are 100% focused on the growth of the business, on winning the market, and making sure our employees are growing and developing as professionals as well. All those important elements is why we go to work every day.
And so you have an executive leadership team that I think, based on what you said about the culture, that you see it as an executive leadership team that's kind of collaboratively making decisions. And is that
Yes,
right?
exactly, exactly.
How
And
many people are on your team, on your executive team?
It's about 10 people, and we're pretty honest with each other. You should see some of the, if you're in the room, you'll hear us, being pretty blunt and give each other straight feedback. And that's the kind of dynamic I think helps shape the business and make sure that everybody's making the right decision. So,
And now, at this point in our conversation, I think I understand why this is a learning and development company and also a sales enablement company. Because now I think I understand maybe that the products and services are about helping organizations onboard, up to speed, train, support, and develop their sales force. Is
yep,
that right?
exactly. So think of what a sales team need to do. You need to hire new people, make sure they ramp quickly. When you launch product, you want to make sure everybody's messaging is on point, right? You got to be able to articulate the value and differentiate yourself from competition. You got to be able to communicate and share and collaborate with the buyer in how they buy from you. You got to give them content, the right message, the right interactions to make sure you all work together. And you need managers to know how to coach and make sure that every sellers are at their best and the highest potential. So that whole thing together, it's a paradigm, frankly, that apply to all functions, but we focus on sales because that's where the best and the highest return on investment could be. If you can, improve a sales team's performance.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me, and I think, to your point, I've seen a lot of sales organizations where some people have these big enterprise accounts, and some people are just trying to break in, and then or you have a new product launch. All of these, you're hiring new people. All of these inflection points are ones, even if you've got an experienced seller with an enterprise customer and they're just sort of an account manager, Well, you don't want that person to just rest on their book of business. You want to find a way to coach that person to do more, better, faster. Or if you've got salespeople who are great at selling, but they don't do their documentation, or there's a problem with getting the orders into order management, or so is it the case that you can that your system? What does your system look like?
Yeah, so the biggest problem that we see there are a few, but I'll point out a couple big ones. So typically in a sales organization, when you're launching a product or when they're onboarding, they're being trained, right? You put them through a boot camp, and usually it's someplace warm, and you have some team building going on, and then you put a pipe down their throat, and you pump like 1,000 PowerPoint through them, and somehow magically expect them to remember anything, right? So of course, the same team 2 weeks later, 2 months, they forget everything. So they actually learn while they're working and experimenting with the live customers themselves, and then eventually figure it out. And those that don't figure out, they end up exiting the company.
Yep.
We think that's a terrible way of ramping and learning. We
Totally agree. Yeah, and that is, by the way, that is the default presumption for most new product launches, most new sales team stand-ups, right?
we call that train but not retain, basically, all the
Yep.
information you need. And instead, we took that paradigm, turned it upside down to say, all right, when is a seller most interested in learning? Is when they're in front of a problem they need to solve right away. I mean, think about, if your washing machine is broken, what do? You go on YouTube, you try to learn how to
Right.
fix it or something, right?
Just
So
in time learning.
just-in-time learning, that's exactly where we start with the seller. And then we'll work backward from that to say, all right, if you train them, how do I reinforce this? How do I help them practice? How do I help the sales managers to coach this individual, professionally and asynchronously? So there's all these capability there. Now, let's switch our eyes to marketing. I don't know if you know this, but marketing organization produce tons of content for the sales team, and less than 30% are even touched or used. That's the
Mhm.
standard statistic. So you got these poor marketers that's slaving away, generating tons of content, and yet nobody is even using the content. That's the sad part, right?
Not only that, but salespeople blame the marketing people because that they don't have enough of a pipeline or whatever it is.
Exactly. They don't have the right content. They don't have the right messaging. Their things, not, the stuff they produce is not resonating. So part of what we do is aligning sales and marketing to make sure there's collaboration, that the frontline conversation is funnel to the marketers, and that they can use that as feedback loop. And that's what's missing critically as well for organizations. And we
And
help
so,
solve that
so
problem.
what do the tools actually look like?
So we have the ability, for example, to record calls in real time, so that after a video conference or telephone calls, the calls can be reviewed asynchronously by anybody. We have AI tools that help transcribe those calls, detect key patterns, and point those patterns out to people. The seller basically will have their app on their phone, right? And they can walk around all day long and learn bite-sized pieces of knowledge that will help them to be more successful, served up by AI, so
Wow.
that they're focused on their weaknesses. They have content at their fingertip. If they're talking to a client, they can pull up a content right away. If they need to learn something, it's like serving a corporate YouTube. They can find the answers right away. So that's the type of solution that we're providing.
So it's basically as they run across skill and knowledge gaps, they're able to go and fill them one skill and knowledge gap at a time
Yep.
using a just-in-time learning system.
Yep. And AI and everything at their fingertips.
Wow, great idea. And so, and you've been developing this now for 10 years.
10 years. We just had our
Fantastic.
10 years anniversary, and we're at the most exciting juncture of our business. Even though we're in the middle of sort of a tech slowdown, we think this is my sixth recession, by the way, as a CEO, Bruce. And, these slowdown actually have a cleansing effect in the market, and I think we're going to do really well as a company here.
Yeah. So, what lessons do you have for people for whom it's their first recession?
First of all, statistics says that a recession is usually 9 months to 18 months, right? So no matter how bleak it look, I will tell the CEO, it's not going to be long lasting. Okay, everyone is different, but they tend to be reasonably short in comparison to the bull market. I would say if you try to deal with the recession while you're in a recession, it's a little too late. You kind of want to build a company well before the recession to make sure it has strong culture, make sure from a financial standpoint, that you don't build a business like drunken sailors, spending money like crazy. That's never a good MO, in my opinion, if you want to last. You may get lucky, but the odds is frankly against you if you don't have a discipline in building a good business. So those are the two things I would say fundamentally sort
So
of
the two
compare.
fundamentals are when things are good, stockpile cash, don't burn cash, and build an infrastructure that's resilient enough to make it through a downturn.
Exactly. It's very easy to build a business. I give away $10 to make $1, but it's much harder to build one that actually adds value, and the customer is showing that you're adding value by giving you more money than you need to acquire them.
Right. And just as I always tell people who are, oh, I can't get a job, I can't get a job. Well, you can always get a job if you can sell. Right.
Exactly.
And likewise, if you can pour gasoline on the sparks of a sales team, then you're recession proof then.
Yeah, we drink our own dog food too, Bruce, by the way. All of our sellers use their own product and they're very effective.
And so, of the 300 people, how many of your 300 people are developers? How many are, finance? How many are salespeople? How many are account managers? How does your organization break out?
Yeah, I don't have the exact breakdown, but I would say about half of our business is customer facing, and the other half is G&A and development. Of those that are blended of customer facing and development, about half of them are technical folks. So we do quite a bit of investment in what we do in terms of the expertise. And it's not just software, right? We're providing a methodology, a process to think about modern enablement differently than what they've been thinking about in terms of traditional learning, traditional way of managing sales content and so forth. There's a whole methodology around that. So together, the team is able to deliver, some of the award-winning solutions that we see out there.
And if I understand correctly, you are well aware, and maybe part of your methodology, part of what you're trying to show sales organizations is, training is not an afterthought. It's not a cost center. It's a way to avoid unnecessary problems, solve problems quickly, plan resources better, have people go in the right direction the first time instead of having to do rework. That training and learning and supporting is a way to supercharge your sales force. It's not something to cut, it's something to double down on.
Yeah, and most importantly, it has to be in the flow of their work versus pulling them out of their selling day to day to do training. Training should be integrated into what they do every single day. And if we do it right, it shouldn't feel terrible. It shouldn't feel like you're forcing these sellers to do something. The seller actually pull the information because they need it.
Yeah, right, and that makes total sense, right? That is to your point. I mean, if your laundry machine isn't working, you go on YouTube and figure out, how do I tighten this screw? If you have a flat tire, you're sitting on the side of the road saying, how do I fix a flat tire? Right?
Exactly. That's how people work. And in our personal life, we're all there already. And somehow you go to the corporate world, it feels like you just went back 20 years. So part of this is just modernizing what works, that we all know works, and just make sure that we can translate that to people's business.
Brilliant. Yuchun Lee, CEO of Allego, serial entrepreneur, a certified brainiac with multiple degrees from the late '80s and early '90s at MIT, and I'm guessing this may not be your last business that you create. Do you think you could find a formula to start an even better business, or is Allego perfect?
Yeah, so right now I'm running Allego. I'm also executive chairman of DSP Concepts, another business that's in the embedded audio space. Chances are you have a car or a product in your house that's run on top of DSP Concepts. So I'm always sort of into a few businesses, but Allego is a wonderful business. I'm so thrilled where we are, and lots of great things to come. I'm sure you'll hear more about us.
And if you were getting on an elevator with someone who's thinking, "Oh my God, how do I get to be like this guy?" Do you have one solid piece of career advice you would give somebody?
Oh, gee. We need another hour for that, but I would say really get down to hard work and love what you do at the end of the day.
Work hard and love what you do. Yuchun Lee, CEO of Allego, thank you for being a guest on the
Thank you.
Indispensables.
It was fun.
Thank you.